Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today I have me, JW Oliver, who is currently a serial entrepreneur. Now he started off his first venture at around 12 years old while in school, and subsequently, again, he's become a multiple-time entrepreneur. And now he's focused a little bit more in the medical industry, where he's expanded over 3,000 practices, and he is focused on really driving growth in the medical field. So, JW, can we get started with your background and a little bit more about how it led you to what you're doing today?
Yeah, so it's funny, and you remind me of me. I mean, you were already started doing things at 20 years old. I think I had already had a couple of different businesses already started and was progressing, doing things. So seeing you at your age, and I think you're in your third year, I believe you said, at school, and
Mhm.
so similar types of mindsets. I'm just a lot older than you now, but no. So it is interesting. The first time I saw an entrepreneurial activity was used to sell pop rocks in these little small packets, and if you bought them in bulk, they were only 5 cents. I don't know if you had pop rocks, you put them in your mouth and they pop all over your mouth.
Yeah.
They're kind of fun. Well, I was taking them to my middle school, and I realized I could sell them for 25 cents. And so I thought, wow, this is quite the margin, 5 cents and 25. I think I did that for a few weeks, and I would sell out almost every day until the high school principal or junior high principal came to me and said, you can't run a business out of your locker at the school. So, but I did make a little money there. And then, gosh, I've been involved in dozens, if not, 20 or 25 different businesses along the way. Today, we got a company called ZimWorX. We are a support company for medical dental offices where we provide outsourcing and labor to help these medical offices expand. And we currently do support about 3,300 different medical dental offices.
Excellent. So before we get into more about what you've done thus far in terms of business, I was really curious about what drives someone at the age of 12 to start wanting to get into business. At that age, I think there's a certain contingent of kids who are not interested in anything other than having fun.
Well, I think it's necessity. Innovation is bred by necessity, as they talk about, and as the old saying goes. And we were very poor. I mean, we were well below the poverty line. Single mom, had 3 older sisters, and so we didn't have a lot of extra things. We got one pair of tennis shoes in August, and that had to last us for the year. If we wanted to do stuff extra, we had to work. I was throwing little shopper newspapers when I was 10. I was selling these pop rocks when I was 12. And then I actually started my first legitimate business when I was about 16. And so mine was, I remember specifically being at the grocery store, and my mom had a little calculator, and she occasionally had to put groceries back because she knew she didn't have the money to pay for them. So she would get her budget right. And I remember just being fired up by, I just don't want to have to put groceries back up. And so it kind of fueled me to continue that inspiration as well.
Excellent. And so this is not ZimWorX is not your first venture. I know you started one at 16, and of course you had multiple. So tell me a little bit more about how you kind of narrowed down into the medical industry specifically, because I'm sure you've been involved in a multitude of businesses at the first part.
Yeah, I've had a company that focuses on imaging equipment that goes all the way back, or dates myself all the way back to 1986. So 40 years of being in the medical industry. I actually went to a Christian-based marriage retreat in 2015, and I meet a gentleman from Africa, Ken Sharp, my now business partner, and he was like, "We should get into business together. We should do something together." And so we started looking at what those opportunities were. Found out that they had this amazing talent pool, speaking the Queen's English, had high level of education, but they just needed jobs. So we leveraged that opportunity to say, hey, let's take these people, align them with companies in the US, Canada, now in the UK that need this support. And we started growing from there. So in 2018, in February of 2018, we had 8 people working for us. And then now we've since grown that to about 1,800 working in our various centers now.
Excellent. So you said support specifically. Now, from what I've understood about the medical industry specifically, there is sometimes a limited amount of staff. And my assumption is that when you talk about support, you're talking about supporting having enough staff per location. But can you clarify what exactly ZimWorX does?
Yeah, we do remote support. We have a program called a medical certification course where they learn a little bit about the medical industry. So they have a pretty good understanding. Now, whether they go into dental or whether they go into dermatology or any type of medical emergency clinics, whatever that might be, they'll get a little more specific training. But we'll do everything from what we call director first impressions. They're literally answering the phone and directing the calls. And again, the little British accent keeps people interested that they like to hear, and so they'll redirect them to the right person. We're doing a lot of back end accounting. We're doing what we call revenue cycle management, where it's the whole process from the insurance submittals to the claims to the resubmittals to follow up for payments, things like that on the back end. So really anything that would be not handling, touching, patient based, we can do in that kind of support.
And this is exactly what sounds like what would allow a practice that's doing already very well to actually expand to multiple practices. So who do you specifically work with? Do you work with people who, or organizations that have multiple locations and are looking to expand, or first time locations looking to expand specifically? Who do you focus on?
Yeah, we target into those markets to those that have anywhere currently between 2 and 10 offices, and they're looking to expand. And again, all of these, whether it's medical or dental, all of these locations, their number one cost is labor. If you remove doctor compensation and owner compensation, things like that, the biggest piece they have is strictly labor. So what we do is show them ways to mitigate that. And sometimes labor can be the piece that keeps you from being able to expand. You know, if you're needing to pay somebody, well, you're in California, you know how quite high that could be. If you're needing to pay somebody $25, $30 an hour plus benefits, which can be another 30, 35%, you might be looking at $40 an hour where we could come in and say, hey, we can help you with those roles and positions at $13 an hour. So it allows them to not only continue their business, but also expand, as you pointed out.
Right. So for a business owner like that has like maybe 1 or 2 locations and sees that, you know, these situations are a bit more complex with regard to finding the correct staff and being able to outsource this work, they may have the presumption that it's going to be very difficult to expand to potentially up to 10 locations. It might be very difficult to even imagine maybe a few more locations. So what do you tell, or how do you kind of position this to someone who has already 1 or 2 locations and already finds that a bit hectic?
Yeah, I think what happens anytime you have a company that's growing, so let's say they've gone from a single location and now maybe they're at 3. Typically that founder, which could be the doctor, they're running accounting, they're running human resources, they're running the front desk, they're managing everything. So they get really squeezed for time. And so they can't imagine going from 3 to even maybe 4 or even maybe 5 because of the headaches. But that's where the economies of scale start to work, where you can say, okay, now I can bring in an operations manager. And instead of 1 operations manager at each location, I've now got 1 overseeing the 5, or maybe a human resources person handling all your day-to-day employment questions and issues that come up. So really, it in a strange way, it's hard when you're at a certain level and then you hit that breakthrough and actually the economies of scale kick in. It gets a little easier.
Certainly. And how do you approach training these employees? Because there sometimes are, for each business owner, there's a particular way they like to be running things in an office and running their particular medical practice. How do you approach training them in a manner that fits that particular interest of the owner?
Yeah, we say that our team members become their team members. And what we mean by that is we're going to give them basic training. We're going to teach them how to do the basic functions, understanding. They're going to have experience with the medical terminology, how to file insurance, how to answer the phone, different procedures. But when it comes to each individual business or each individual practice, they're all going to operate a little bit different. So they have to then allocate enough time to train and help leverage that team member to do it as they want to. So it's not, we always say it's not plug and play. Please don't think it's going to pop in there and it's working and it's operating. There is a learning curve, but it's quick. You know, usually somewhere in that first 90 days, you'll have some team members who are quite capable.
Right. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing some people that do own some practices. So I understand there's a change in how they operate in terms of person by person, business owner by business owner, essentially.
Correct.
Now, what I was really curious about is how you identified this gap. I know you met your business partner at an event, and I was really curious about how you identified this because it's a niche problem for a very niche industry. So I was very curious about how you came about this.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. When we first hired, I hired a couple for my imaging company, and we actually had them doing, one of them was doing some IT support, and one of them was doing some accounting. And I had a friend of mine who had a medical practice, and she came to me and said, "Hey, do you think they could handle insurance claims, verifications, follow-ups?" And I was like, "Maybe, I don't know, and maybe that'll work." And so we went into that office. She called me within 90 days and said, "Hey, you got something here. There's a real demand here in the dental medical side for insurance verifications and follow-up and filings." And so that's where we started to really scale. We really focused in on that niche, that piece of the business, and truly just took off from there.
Certainly. And was there a particular point, because now you're helping over 3,300 locations, was there a particular point where you were able to do this at scale, or were you always able to kind of handle helping multiple practices at the same time?
Yeah, it got easier as we grew. I mean, I can remember when we were supporting, we had about 500 team members who were supporting probably 1,000 offices. That was actually harder than it is today, just because we had the right people, we had the experience. We have trained internal team members, which can help support those practices. So in some respects, it's about getting over that hump. It's about pushing through when those times get really difficult. And I think that's what we were able to do during that period as well.
Right. And you have this particular focus on Queen's English. What does that mean specifically?
Well, the country we started in, Zimbabwe. So we have 2 locations in Zimbabwe, one in the capital Harare, one in Victoria Falls. We have 2 centers in Lusaka, Zambia, and then one in Costa Rica. But Zambia and Zimbabwe were formerly called Rhodesia, North and South Rhodesia, or Rhodesia, which was founded by Cecil Rhodes. And so what happened is they were an English colony, right? And so English became their first language. Now they maintained their local languages and still do, whether that's Shona or Ndebele in Zimbabwe. But English became the primary language. So the English literally accent and a little bit of that British twang stayed with them. And so it's quite beautiful. We get people all the time. They call into a medical office. They're speaking to one of our team members and they're saying, "Are you from London?" And they'll say, "Well, actually, I'm from Zimbabwe." They're like, "Well, of course." They say, "Where's that?" And so they want to know where that's at. But truly, it's really been a difference. And those are some of the things that really set us apart. Typical outsourcing models, or when you're dealing with people working remotely, you may be dealing with languages that can be difficult to understand. So having a little edge there, as well as an education. Out of our almost 1,800 team members now, 96% have a university education. So it really helps too that not only is the language well, but the education level is there too.
Certainly. And when you're ever expanding a company and you're looking to grow it, one of the most important concepts behind that is really understanding how to hire the correct people. So what is your overall approach to hiring the correct people for the correct position?
Yeah, we've now got really stringent initial testing. So we have a screening process, which is customized. Once they get close, depending on what the client uses, we typically use the Colby testing till we find out if their skill sets are going to be matching up. Some clients want us to use. We'll allow our clients to help us with what type of skill set they're needing. We may even use DISC or something. I'm talking about our clients in the U.S. or UK or Canada. But it's really important. I don't care whether, and really this goes back to whether you have people in the United States in person or whether you have them working remotely. If you don't have a really good selection process, elimination process, then you truly are pounding that square peg in that round hole.
Right.
As Jim Collins points out in his book, Good to Great, you got to get the right people. Not only it's the right people on the bus, but the right people on the bus in the right seats. And I think that's really, really important, is to make sure you get the right teams.
And timing is also very important. I think I mentioned Steve Greenspan earlier before the podcast. One of the things he had done when he was scaling his company is not hiring for the current needs, but hiring for the future needs specifically.
Absolutely.
Where are we going, right? Where are we going? And if you're not hiring for the next phase of growth, then you're going to be putting yourself on a rails where you're not going to be able to keep up with that growth in the future. So I really appreciate that perspective there. Now, the other aspect of what I want to talk about today, and I think we were discussing this beforehand, is really about helping the ministries, I believe you mentioned. So tell me a little bit more about that. I was very curious when we were talking about that before the podcast.
Yeah, my business partner and I, we were both are and have had other businesses. This is my full time now, but we were both like, well, hey, how can we make a difference? And we're like, well, hey, what if we hired people and then we gave away some of those profits towards different ministries, both coming from Christian backgrounds? We said, well, hey, what if we gave 51% to God and let Him be in control? We thought, and of course, I always tell people, first 4 or 5 years, that was always easy because 51% of nothing was nothing. And we didn't have to write those checks, right? Because we weren't profitable. We were starting up. We were constantly scaling and growing. But now that's turned into a significant number each year that we're able to donate. And so what we do is we try to give back to sustainable projects. So, for instance, we may help people. Little examples would be we helped a young man buy a sewing machine in Haiti. Well, I literally just got pictures yesterday from him of the new garments he had made, and it was affecting his life, all the way to helping building schools and facilities and buildings that will help people with a way of life. And then we also we help do some training for others where people can. We got one that's became a doctor, numerous of them became nurses. So however we can take this and use it to really help people in their time of need and help them to get out of that. And so it's a lot of fun. When you're giving away 51%, you start to realize that you can make a lot of impact with that as well.
Certainly. And I was curious about how, as you did say, 50% of nothing is nothing. But as you grew and you started to expand, you've made a lot more. How did you stay steadfast in the conviction of being able to still give away 51%?
Oh man, yeah, it was easy. They say it well. It's easier to write the big checks when you have the money. I think it's actually harder, because you start writing those big numbers, thinking, "Oh, I could have bought a boat or a car or a plane or whatever," right? But I think knowing that we believe we've been very highly favored in our business and our growth by what we're doing, but we also see the impact. And truly, literally every day we get to see the little things. We've got an orphanage there in Zimbabwe that it's called Emerald Hills School for the Deaf and Orphanage. 400 kids there, and at night the power goes off there pretty regular. So we just installed a complete solar power system for the entire school. So now at night they literally can study and read by the night. The nuns who run it, they're able to be able to use it. So little things like that keep you motivated or keep me motivated in seeing the impact it's truly having.
Love it. So what I'll do now is go ahead and shift this conversation to a little bit more about you personally, JW. Okay. And the first question I have for you is, what is something about you or your life that you wish more people knew about?
More people about me or my life. Probably my family. I mean, I do try to do that on social media as much as I can without, looking like a little overbearing. But I think having been married 32 years, very supportive wife and everything that I do, 2 wonderful adult kids now who, weren't off the rails and did things the right way and have always been good kids. I think just having that piece, because if your personal life is in disarray, whether it's your marriage or your kids, or it could be if you've got some kind of substance abuse or depression or whatever that may be, the rest of your life is going to be a mess as well.
So JW, there's probably a lot of changes between you when you're in your 20s and you now. But if you could point out the biggest difference between you in your 20s and now, what do you think that difference is?
I'm probably much more committed to whatever cause that is that I'm processing. I'm very passionate and committed with I mentioned my family, but I'm also very passionate about the work that we do each day. So I'm 61, and a lot of times people are saying, "Wow, when are you going to retire?" I'm thinking, what are they talking about? Why would anybody want to do that? That sounds horrible. I think I'm building momentum because you start to see the impact that your work can have. And I think everybody can. At your age, you can see the impact.
Right.
at any age. So I think that keeps me motivated most of all
Mhm.
from when I was in my 20s. And
Mhm.
I'm way more humble.
Right.
I,
Okay.
I thought I knew quite a bit when I was 20, and looking back, I'm like, I didn't really know a whole lot. So I think
Yeah.
a little bit of humility goes a long ways.
What did you learn about the world when you were entering business at such a young age, around 12 to 16? What did you learn about the world in that time?
I would say business is really, it's not for everybody.
Right.
I think everybody wants to say, "Oh, I work for myself," and "Oh, I'm self-employed," or "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur." But I've found a lot of times people who say they're an entrepreneur, they're not really an entrepreneur. They've inherited their business from somebody, or they've kind of bought into an existing business, and that's really, you might be a great person, you might be a great
Mhm.
business entrepreneur, you might have a great business mind, but there's a difference between being a somebody who's in business and being an entrepreneur. I would just say it's really hard.
Mhm.
I've been broke 3 times. I've been felt like I was out of it many more times, and so you just have to have this spirit that, as Zig Ziglar says, failure is an event, not a person. So you just
Mhm.
realize it was just something that happened, so you keep going. But I would just say it's hard, and you
Yeah.
got to be prepared to fail. To be honest with you.
Right. And how do you approach failure in that regard? Because I think as an entrepreneur, you probably went through a lot more failures and a lot more setbacks than you even expected to happen. So how did you approach that? What was your perspective on failure? Because that's what's required to succeed at the end of the day.
That was those. This is stuff I really like to talk about
Mhm.
because I think I'm so thankful for all of those failures. I truly am. I'm so
Yeah.
thankful for all of those because I learned way more. I met somebody not too long ago. He was probably in his mid 20s, 30s, and he was telling me about all his businesses and how successful they were. And I'm like, well, have you had any of them fail? No, no, I would never go that way. And I thought, oh man, you're just one click away from failing at something, and it's going to be devastating to you because you weren't prepared for it, right?
Right.
You didn't have this expectation. So I just think you have to be ready. Me coming from a Christian background, I immediately turned to the Bible. There's a verse in James 1:2-7 that says, "I
Mhm.
count it pure joy when I go through various trials, knowing the testing of my soul produces endurance." And that one
Mhm.
has just always stuck with me. It says, think about that for just a minute. I count it pure joy when I go through various trials. That's
Mhm.
nuts. Why would
Yeah.
I have joy when I'm going through tough times? But I think when you get past it, you go, aha, I know I had joy. I learned something. And that's
Right.
key. That's really key.
Some of the worst things that I thought ever happened to me at the time are actually the best things that could have ever happened to me. If you don't know this, actually, I talked about on my podcast. I usually talk about a lot about how I lost 70 pounds, and I actually, if you don't know about this, I was actually a student that was failing out of school. I was not taking anything seriously. I was really severely overweight, and I had to make a change because my doctor would tell me I was going to lose 15 years of my life, and
Wow.
as soon as I had that talk, I basically forced myself to get into shape. I lost 40 pounds in a year. And that basically taught me I was capable of something I didn't think I was capable of before. And that basically transformed my entire other parts of my life where I succeeded in school. I started taking on new endeavors. I started getting into real estate around 15 years old. There's a lot of different things that happened because of that. But at the time, you typically think that the worst things that are happening to you right now are really bad for you. But in hindsight, after that, you're going to realize it's one of the best things that could have ever happened to you. So I really appreciate the perspective. So what we'll do now is go ahead and conclude the podcast with your plans for this year, whether that be professionally or personally.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I did read that about you. I was going to tell you, very, very admirable to do that at such a young age. I went through a similar experience when
Mhm.
I was in 1994. I mean, I was an athlete in high school, played football, played sports. Uh, my 20s, just let myself get out of shape. And I'd actually gotten up to about 280 pounds, 200, about almost 290 pounds. And,
Wow.
and I woke up one day and I was like, I don't like the relationship I'm in. My father had just passed away, and I
Yeah.
was like, I'm fat as all can be, right? And
Mhm.
so I remember a friend of mine said, "Well, why don't you lose weight, break up with your girlfriend, and go date this other girl you wanted to go out with, who's now my wife. And so I lost 70 pounds. I went from 290 down to 218. And I still probably struggle with about 20, 25 pounds today that I'd love to have off. But you know what? It made me realize that that's one thing that showed you a level of success. And I do think, not to chastise anybody, but I think when you are overweight, it can lead to a lot of other problems in your work and your marriage and your social life and just your self-confidence. So I applaud you for that. I know you're working with a lot of executives on that too. I think being in shape and getting yourself into physical fitness is important. You don't see a lot of really high-level successful people who are grossly obese. You just don't see it, right? It just doesn't happen. So I think it's important. So this year, I've done some fun stuff in the past. I like to hike. I've done like Mount Everest Base Camp and some stuff in Peru. We're doing August. We're doing Mont Blanc in France. Going to do a little traverse around Mont Blanc, and we got some travel besides that. So yeah, we're just looking to grow in our business and having the rest of successful 2026 here.
Love it. So where can people learn more about you, JW, and more about the work you're doing?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's just jwoliver.com. I've got some stuff in there about some of the speaking that I do, as well as some of the philanthropy we do. I love to talk to people like this. You reached out to me. I was happy to do this. I would love to do this, especially with young people. I love to invest in the next generation. And then if you're interested in anything we're doing in our business, ZimWorX, on my hat here, ZimWorX.com. And lastly, I'm a big believer in it wasn't coincidence. Do hard stuff. I believe every day we need to tackle that hard stuff.
Love it. Well, thank you for joining the podcast, JW. It's a pleasure to have you on. This was Aryan Mohindra and GW